Oh, there we go. Okay, what I thought we'd do, we'd pick up where we left off last week. I thought it was a kind of, back to basics of going through the Citizenship 100 questions. But, kind of covers the basics, make sure people understand these things, and we can dig a little bit deeper as we go. So if it's just you two, then we'll go through. Let me find the flip cards. There we go. So we'll go through. If you have questions, be sure to ask. But I think you two are going to know quite a lot of this stuff. So where were we last? Let's go back a few. So we talked about, we're talking about the president. So this is talking about government, civics and government. So who signs a bill? Oh, you guys can see my screen, right? Okay, right?
Yep.
Okay. So who signs a bill to become law?
The president.
Right, the president signs a bill. That's kind of like the last step because it goes through Congress and both houses of Congress have to agree on the bill. But then it's law when the president signs it. That's, of course, two branches of government, the checks and balances. Okay, who vetoes bills?
The president.
Yeah, the president vetoes a bill. Okay. The president's cabinet. What does the president's cabinet do?
Advises the president.
Advises the president? Yeah, Nadia, you definitely have studied these pretty. Yeah, you're like exact words here. So the president's cabinet does not appear in the Constitution. It is not an official thing, but from even back to the first president, George Washington, he wanted to surround himself with advisors and experts, and so that became I forget. So it kind of evolved over time, like a lot of things in government and in America. It evolved over time, and I forget what president they started calling it his cabinet, like a kitchen cabinet, because it was just like a variety of people. One person advising on the economy, and one person advising on uh, national defense and things like that. So they called it the president's kitchen cabinet, and now it's like just called the president's cabinet. It's the heads of all the executive branch departments, like the Department of Defense, the Department of State, even Agriculture Department, the Housing and Urban Development Department. All those secretaries, those heads of those departments, are on the president's cabinet, and some other people, the Attorney General. Okay, so the president's cabinet advises the president. Okay, so I just named a few. Can you name 2 cabinet level positions?
And I forgot. Like Secretary of Agriculture or
yeah, really any of those secretaries of the executive branch departments. So yeah, here's the agriculture, the commerce. These are all different people, all different departments. And of course, the executive branch, we think of it as just the president, but the executive branch is all these different departments. And there's, of course, thousands of people that work in each of these departments in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere across the country. The Attorney General, the Vice President. So when the president has a cabinet meeting, all or at least most of these people are sitting around the table. And so if they bring up an issue, say, the coronavirus, each of these secretaries are going to be looking at the coronavirus from their own perspective. Okay, the Secretary of Labor is going to think, okay, how is this going to affect workers? The Secretary of Housing and Urban Development is going to think, how is this going to affect people? There's been talk of some cities, you don't have to pay rent, or they're not doing any, what's the word? What's the word when you get kicked out of your apartment? Evictions. They're not doing any evictions during this crisis because because it wouldn't be right if people lose their job and can't pay their rent. Is that right now? Is that really their fault? So the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development would be sitting in the cabinet meeting thinking about that. Secretary of Energy would be thinking, how is this going to affect energy, the electricity grid, and all that stuff? Okay, and so they would speak up to advise the president about those issues. Okay, what does the judicial branch do?
Check laws, probably.
What's that?
They check laws if the law goes against the Constitution.
Right. To see, what does it say here? Reviews laws, explains laws, resolves disputes or disagreements, and decides if a law goes against the Constitution, and that would be if it's unconstitutional. Okay, that's the judicial branch. What is the highest court in the United States?
Supreme Court.
Supreme Court.
Yeah, the Supreme Court. Now, other states, each state has their own Supreme Court, and some call it the Supreme Court, some states call it the Superior Court, or they have their own names. But within the state judicial systems, there's their own Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court of the United States is the top of the pyramid. How many justices are currently on the Supreme Court?
9.
There's 9. Yeah, there's 9. There's been up to 12. Because the Constitution doesn't specify a number. And so different presidents at different times have kind of to suit themselves have upped the number. I think the most it's ever been is to 12. I think Frederick Roosevelt, FDR, in the 1930s and 40s, FDR, who was elected to 4 terms, I'm pretty sure he did what they call court packing, because the Constitution gives the president the power to nominate Supreme Court justices, right? The Constitution doesn't specify that there can only be 9. There's been, most of the time throughout history, there's 9. But he said, well, what if I just nominate a few more, and I'll just make them people that I like, that ideologically agree with me, politically agree with me. And then that way, if I just nominate 3 people, then my viewpoint would be the majority of the court. So instead of waiting for somebody to retire or die or step down and then nominating somebody that he likes, he just nominated a couple of people and boosted the number up to 12, and so thus making his viewpoint the majority of the court. Now, he did that for specific reasons. I don't remember historically why he did that, and I think maybe it's happened more than once, but I'm pretty sure FDR, Roosevelt, did what they call court packing, because the Constitution doesn't say how many Supreme Court justices, but generally there's 9. I think for the most part in history there's been 9. Although I think maybe they've been like down to 5, like in the early days of the country. Yeah. Who is the Chief Justice of the United States now?
I don't remember.
Let's look at the current Chief Justice is this guy, John Roberts, and he's young as far as Supreme Court justices go. How old is he? He was born in 1955, which would make him about, 65 years old? which is young. I mean, these people serve well into their 80s or even 90s. I mean, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is born in 1933, which makes her 87 years old. So John Roberts will be Chief Justice of the Supreme Court probably for a very long time. And that happens. Sometimes throughout history, you have people nominated as Supreme Court justices, and they serve for 20 or 30 years. And sometimes it's much less because it's a lifetime appointment, right? So they'll serve until they can't serve or don't want to serve any longer. And you have down here at the bottom, these two are Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh. Those are the two that have come through during Trump's term in office. So those are the most recent. I guess they're probably in order here of seniority. I think Clarence Thomas and Ruth Bader Ginsburg have been on the longest. Okay, so John Roberts is the Chief Justice right now. Under our Constitution, some powers belong to the federal government. What is one power of the federal government? What's one thing that...
Print the money to declare war.
Yep, to declare war goes to Congress to print money. Oh, let me see here. To print money, declare war, create an army, and to make treaties. Yep. Okay. Under our Constitution, some powers belong to the states. What is one power of the states?
Provide schooling and education, fire department, police department.
Yeah. Yeah. Schooling and education, police, fire departments, give driver's licenses, zoning and land use. So that, and you think of it, that makes sense because those things are going to be specific to a state by state, or even local. We have state police, but we also have local police at the city and township level. School, we have the state board of education, but also obviously your town or city runs their own schools. So it's a balance, and that's the federalism model that we have, the balance between the federal government and the states. The Constitution explicitly, purposely gives some powers to the states and some powers to the national government. Okay, who is our governor?
Wolf.
Yeah, Governor Wolf. Oh, Jay Inslee. Okay, I don't know where this person lived who made this flashcards, but I forget Inslee. I don't know where that's the governor of. But yeah, Tom Wolf is our governor. What's the capital of Pennsylvania?
Harrisburg.
Harrisburg. Yeah. Okay. What are the two major political parties in the United States?
Democratic and Republican.
Yeah, Democratic Party and the Republican Party. That has not always been the case. There's been other parties that have come through, and I think in the future these two parties may not be it. Political parties come and go. They lose power, they lose influence, and then another group starts to identify itself and comes in and becomes popular, and people join that group. Of course, you don't have to belong to a political party. But these right now, the two major political parties are Democratic and Republican Party. They have been for a long time. I think these have been the two main political parties since, I think, the Civil War. But it hasn't always been the case, and I think it'll change again someday, I'm sure. What is the political party of the president now?
Republican.
Trump is a Republican, yeah. What is the name of the Speaker of the House of Representatives right now?
Nancy
I don't
Pelosi.
remember.
Yeah, Nancy Pelosi. And what party is she?
Democratic.
Democratic, right. That's unrelated to the president. Now she only took position as a Speaker of the House of Representatives in 2018. Actually, I guess it'd be the following January. But the 2018 election, when we had an election, what they call midterm election between the presidential election, and the Democrats became the majority in the House of Representatives because the Republicans had been the majority in the House. But then in the 2018 election, you have the Democrats take over the majority of the House of Representative seats. And so whatever the majority is in the House, they vote and nominate their own speaker. So she's only been speaker since 2018. And that can change, just election to election. That can change every 2 years. All right, there are 4 amendments to the Constitution about who can vote. Describe one of them.
Who reach 18 years old age.
Okay, yeah, there's
Citizen. Citizen.
describe
If they citizen.
the age. Okay, then who's a
Men and women can.
okay? Women can vote. What's another one?
Yep, men and women, and all races.
And regardless of race. Okay, and oh, I guess the first one you kind of have to take them in order historically. The first one is a male of any race can vote. Okay, that would be probably the 13th Amendment after the Civil War. Then, later on you have women can. This is reading to me again. I forgot that it reads. It reads it to me. You can't hear it, but it's like reading it to me. I forget. So any male of any race is a citizen and can vote. Then any citizen, including women, can vote. And then, yeah, Nadia, like you said, citizens 18 and older can vote because they had to specify that because I think it was different state to state. So they said, okay, this has to be a national thing. So we need to make a constitutional amendment. And then you don't have to pay a poll tax to vote. What's that in reference to? What's a poll tax?
Like if you want to vote, you have to pay some fee.
Yeah, it's a tax, a fee to vote, which of course is going to mean that poor people can't vote, people with no money can't vote. So even if you're a citizen, you can't. You're blocked from voting. Or there's a bar you have to get over to vote. You have to pay a tax. You have to pay a fee. That was removed, I think, early 1900s when you have what they call in the race relations between whites and blacks, you have what they call the Jim Crow era. Of course, this is well after the Civil War, early 1900s, World War II, World War I, World War II time, and you have even though any citizen of any race can vote, male or woman now, there's still a lot of blocks, a lot of things blocking minorities from voting, blocking blacks from voting. One of them was a poll tax. At other points in history, you had to take an intelligence test, which shortly after the Civil War, you have the 15th Amendment, which says all African American men, not yet women, but all African American men of any race can vote. Okay, super. So you go to vote, and then they give you a reading test. They have you read, the preamble of the Constitution. Well, if you can't read, a lot of these former enslaved people hadn't yet learned to read. The education wasn't quite caught up to speed. Or they'd give you like Shakespeare to read, which would be pretty tough for us to read, me to read today. And so they'd give you this silly, hard thing to read, and then when you can't read it, they say, well, you know what, you can't vote then. So they got rid of a lot of these barriers to voting, including a tax. They said nobody has to pay to vote. It's unconstitutional, un-American. Okay, so that was removed. Okay. What is one responsibility? There's a couple. What's one responsibility that is only for American citizens?
To vote
To vote. Okay.
and to run for the president.
Right, to serve in many offices. Right, yeah, and especially president, you have to be an American citizen. Okay. To vote in a federal election, yeah, you're right, to hold certain public offices and to serve on a jury. If you've ever been summoned to serve on a jury, to go down to your local county courthouse and serve on a jury, that is for American citizens. Okay. So those, what were those called? They said, what is one responsibility? Now we have a question of name one right only for U.S. citizens. Might be a little tougher. Can we think of anything? What's a right reserved for U.S. citizens? That's a little trickier. It says to vote in a federal election and to run. Yeah, these two questions are a little bit odd. What's a responsibility and what's a right? But I mean, yes. Anyway, these are saved for American citizens. Vote in a federal election. Run for federal office. Okay. What are two rights of everyone living in the United States? These should be a little bit easier. What are two universal rights of anybody living in the U.S.?
Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, we got those. And then all the Bill of Rights, those First Amendment rights, right? Freedom of expression,
Yeah.
freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom to petition the government, freedom of worship, Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. So those, the Bill of Rights, First Amendment, Second Amendment rights, all those, the Bill of Rights applies to anyone in the United States, not just citizens. And I'm sure there's people out there that think, oh, if you're not an American citizen, you don't have the freedom of speech. That's not true. It's if you are here, you have these freedoms, these rights, these protections. What do we show loyalty to when we say the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the United States.
Yeah, it says, I pledge allegiance to the flag and how does it go? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. To the republic, the country, that the flag stands for. So you pledge allegiance to the flag and the country that it stands for. Because, in the end, a flag is just a flag. It's just a piece of material hanging on a pole. But you're pledging allegiance, faithfulness to the country that the flag represents. Okay. What is one promise, Nadia? What do you think? What is one promise you make when you become a United States citizen?
To serve to the country, if country needed.
To serve. Yeah, to serve the nation if needed.
Yeah. To give up loyalty to other countries. Yeah.
Yeah, to
Actually,
obey.
it's interesting because I did not give up my Ukrainian citizenship when I got my American citizenship, and no one asked me about that. So it seems like I still have two citizenship, but because I gave up loyalty to other countries, getting U.S. citizenship, it means if there is any war between Ukraine and U.S., I have to be on U.S. side, right?
I think so. Yeah, you can keep a dual citizenship, but at least in your mind and in your heart, you're supposed to give up loyalty to other countries. You may have dual citizenship, but you should, I guess they would say, you should view yourself as an American, period. You know, there's benefits to having dual citizenship, but I guess they would argue that you should view yourself as an American citizen first and foremost. And you're promising to defend the Constitution and the laws of the United States, to obey the laws, serve in the military if needed, serve in other ways if needed, be loyal to the United States. Okay. So how did that say it? What was the question? Oh, what was one promise you make when you become a U.S. citizen? Okay. How old do citizens have to be to vote for president?
18.
18. You have to be 18. And that's changed at different times, and then they had the constitutional amendment to set it at 18. What are two ways that we can participate in our democracy?
Voting,
Voting.
participate, yeah, to the voting, and if we help in some companies when there is president voting.
Yeah, to participate in elections and things. Okay, lots of different things. To vote, join a political party, help with a campaign, okay, to participate in an election of some kind, join a civic group, join a community group, and then just be a part of things, reach out to your elected officials, call a senator or representative, run for office yourself, write to the newspaper, just participate in their democracy generally. Okay. Um, and these are things, yeah, it's good to do. If you have a need, if you have a concern, bring it up, get it out there. If you think you're the best person that could run for office and fix the problems, then run for office. And that's, it'd be nice if everybody participated in some way when needed. Okay, when is tax day? When is the last day you can send in federal income tax forms?
Usually it's April 15th, but this year they extended to July 15th, I think.
Right, yeah, yesterday, and it just passed without too much notice. Yesterday was tax day. But yeah, quite a couple of weeks ago, pretty early on in this thing, they extended that to July 15th, which is a good chunk. I mean, that's 3 months. But, I guess they're just trying to avoid problems because, when you are late on filing your taxes, there's problems. You have to pay a fee, and then, so I guess they're just being nice, and that's good. But yeah, generally, tax day is April 15th, and you pay the taxes for the previous year. Yeah. When must all men, this is an interesting thing, and I'm sure someday this will change, but when must all men register for selective service?
Since they reach 18 years age till 26,
Yeah,
probably.
yeah. When they turn 18, and then you are eligible for selective service between ages 18 and 26. Now, what does that mean, selective service?
War, they will be called to
Yeah,
serve.
yeah. In the Vietnam War, they had selective service. They had what they call a draft, and young men would get a letter in the mail, and you would be called to war. They did it by birthday, and they needed men to serve in the military during the Vietnam War. And so they had a draft. If you got the letter, if your birthday was chosen, you had to go serve in the army. Now you could get out of it in some ways if you were injured, if you had a health problem, or there's different ways to get out of it. But they had a draft. Now I I believe my personal belief is we will never have a draft in this country again because I don't think our politicians we may go to war again someday. You never know what how it's gonna unfold. But I don't see us having a draft ever again because the politicians don't want to force people into into doing that. I guess it happened in the 70s. It happened in the Vietnam War. But I just don't think the way our society is, I don't know. I don't see it. Also, the way we conduct war now does not involve millions of soldiers. The way we shoot missiles and drones and drop bombs, so much of it is done remotely. Warfare has changed. I don't know. My personal opinion is,
Okay, but what if World War III starts? No one wants, but who knows?
well, I think if the next big war comes, I don't think it's going to be, this is just my personal opinion. I don't think the next big war is going to be fought with troops on the ground shooting guns. I think it's going to be missiles and bombs, which you can do sitting in an office somewhere. Do it all with computers and drones and maybe a few airplanes. But
Yeah, that's right. But they can need army just to help people to survive, like National Guard.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess the only fighting isn't the only thing that the military does. Um, we have the military around the world right now, and we're not fighting everywhere. We do quite a lot of outreach, building things. In Afghanistan, we do some fighting, but we're building towns, we're building bridges and schools and things to help those communities where we are. So yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's not all dropping bombs and missiles, but yeah, I don't know, but currently it's between ages 18 to 26, and it is just men that are eligible for selective service. Because there could be, they could do a draft tomorrow if we break out into a war and they feel the need. And then, you know, men between 18 and 26 are required to enter the military. Yeah. Okay. Um, okay, so now we're looking backwards in history. So what is one reason colonists came to America? Got to switch gears here, put on our history hat.
Yeah, because they wanted to get better life, and someone was um, like they ran because they were how can I say this? Like refugee because of their
They were
religion.
persecuted. They were being persecuted. Yeah.
Yeah, persecuted. I forgot this word.
Yeah. So what does it say? So freedom, okay, religious freedom. The Pilgrims came because they were being persecuted. Now, of course, not all those colonists were Pilgrims, but the Pilgrims came to Plymouth, Massachusetts, 1620, because to seek religious freedom from England, um, to practice their religion, to escape persecution, and then also economic opportunity. It was Britain. America were British colonies. And so the British people would say, hey, I'm going to hop on a ship and move to the American colonies and maybe get rich. They were growing tobacco and later cotton. Um, and so there was a lot of religious reasons, but also economic reasons. Some people thought they could get rich, start a new life.
And I think it's still the same.
Well, yeah.
People are seeking better life, and because of religion. like me. I was a refugee because of religion reason.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I mean, I'm picturing the pre-1776 colonists, but you're right, still immigration. People are coming to America for the same reasons as always. Yeah, you're right. Who lived in America before the Europeans arrived?
Native Americans,
Native
Indians.
Americans, American Indians. Okay. Um, historians differ on their opinions, but somewhere between 20 and 50,000 years, people have been living in the Americas, North and South America. Um, so for centuries and centuries and centuries, you had Native Americans living here, and you have, the Iroquois and like the Mississippi cultures in North America. But then you also have, and then of course the Western um, United States out in the desert, those Indians. But then you also have Native Americans down in Central America, South America. You have the Incans, the Mayans, the Aztecs building the big pyramids and sculptures. So people were living here for centuries, thousands of years before the Europeans arrived. And I think that's an interesting history to read sometimes.
Actually, my question, I have a question. I'm sorry. I know we had so many tribes here, Indian tribes, and still have. Do they have different languages?
Oh yeah. Yeah, they would all have, picture before Christopher Columbus stepped foot, before the Europeans arrived, it was just Native Americans all from North America to South America, all across, and there was hundreds of different languages. Yeah. And
Yeah,
there were some
I know.
common languages, like a lot of people throughout history speak multiple languages. So you'd have some languages that the Native Americans would speak that would be like a common language for that region, but then they'd have their own tribal language. But yeah, by and large, all different tribes spoke all different languages. There wasn't by any means one language. There's hundreds of different languages.
Yeah. It is said that my family has some Native American blood in us,
Okay.
but it hasn't really been proven. But yeah, there isn't really that many, I guess you could say, Native Americans, I guess, on this East Coast side, because they've all been moved to the West. But I don't know. I would love to look that history up for, just to view my own history.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I have another question, please.
Yeah.
When we fill in some application here now for a job or for some other benefits, government benefits, they always ask about if we are Native Americans or white or uh, Spanish, Latino. Why? Is there any discrimination between races?
Yeah, a lot of times, there will be that information. Like I just did the census. I waited too long, but I just did it last week. Did it online, pretty easy. And there was a question about, several questions for each member of my family of their race. Um, yeah, I mean, just in America, there's all different races, and that's not as much the case in some other countries around the world, but it certainly does seem at times that we really care about race. I think the Native American thing is that if you have Native Americans in your family, if you're part Native American, um, there are sometimes benefits like college applications, or um, if you want to get like a college scholarship or different, it's a lot of times like financial things. There will be some benefit given to you if you have some Native American in your family. I think the thinking there is throughout American history, the Europeans mistreated the Native Americans so terribly that there's a little bit, now we, as a, I don't know, as a way of apology, you give some benefit to Native Americans. But it has to be a certain amount. Like you have to have, you have to be 1/16th or 1/32nd Native American. But if you have one Native American in your family 20 generations ago and you're like 0.05% Native American, then that's not enough to give you those.
Okay, how people can prove this?
I don't know how, yeah, like when you're asked those questions, I don't know if they follow up. Do they say, okay, now prove it? I don't know. That's a good
Do
question.
they do any blood test or something?
I don't know. It depends on the thing, the question you're talking about. I'd say for the most part, I can't imagine people are really giving a lot of blood tests to prove stuff, but um, it is odd. It's odd. You get the race question pops up in places you wouldn't expect it. Um, and most of the time, it's like not a required question. So if you don't want to say, or if you say that's none of your business, then most of the time you're okay if you leave it blank. But yeah, it pops up in where you'd least expect it, and there is that question: are you part Native American? And the other thing is, Native Americans, even today, they have an interesting relationship with the United States of America because now I'm about to talk about something that I don't know much about, so I could be wrong. But I mean, Native American tribes are function almost like other countries within the United States. Like Native American tribes, if you are proven to be a member of that tribe, um, they have their own lands, sometimes called reservations. They have their own lands in the United States. Most of them are out west. Um, and they function almost like their own little countries. They have their own police forces sometimes, they have their own schools. Some American laws don't apply to them. That's why sometimes you have Native American tribes running casinos in different areas, like states where casinos are illegal. I think I'm thinking of Connecticut, New York, maybe even Pennsylvania. I don't know. There's states where it's illegal to have a casino, but the Native Americans can run their own casinos because some American laws, I don't know, I don't really know, but some American laws don't apply to Native American tribes. Um, it's an interesting relationship. I don't know much about it, but it's an interesting relationship between the Native Americans and the United States of America because that history is pretty ugly, the way they've been treated. And so I think to some degree these days we try to right those wrongs. Um, but no, there's a lot to uncover there. Okay, this should be not hard. What group of people was taken to America and sold as slaves? Where were they from?
Africa.
Yeah, people from Africa.
Africa.
Okay. Why did the colonists fight the British?
Because of high taxes.
Because of high taxes. Okay, they were being taxed. Now they were a British colony, so they were technically British people, British citizens. They were being taxed, but they didn't have representation in Parliament. So their slogan was no taxation without representation. If we're going to be taxed by the government in London, we want to be represented in the government in London, which, that does make sense. They fought back because the British Army stayed in their houses in the colonies, and they didn't have self-government. They over the 1600s, especially into the 1700s, really the 1700s, and as you head closer to 1776, the people in America, the British people in America, were starting to view themselves more as different than the people in Britain. They they developed their own accent. They spoke differently. They dressed differently. They had their own culture. They had their own cities and trade and money. Well, no, they didn't have their own money, but they were British. But they started to view themselves as different than the people in Britain, and so it just kind of got to a point where they wanted to be a different country. So they wrote the Declaration of Independence. Who wrote the Declaration of Independence?
Washington? Oh no.
No, it wasn't Washington. It was one of those founding father guys.
Lincoln.
No,
No.
Lincoln comes along later. He's many years later in the Civil War as Lincoln.
I forgot.
It was Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson writes, it was, they had a big meeting. They had the Continental Congress was meeting in Philadelphia. So they were, as a group, members from each state, people sent from each state, each colony, they were doing all the thinking together, but then they said, okay, somebody's got to write this down. And so Jefferson was chosen because he was a very good writer. The ideas all came from the group working together, but Jefferson actually did write the Declaration of Independence. When was the Declaration of Independence adopted?
1776.
Yeah, what date? What was the month and day in 1776?
July 1st.
Yeah, July 4th, 1776. The funny thing is, it was signed on July 2nd, and if you look in John Adams, he was one of the other founding fathers. He was the second president, John Adams. He wrote in his diary, July 2nd, he said, this day will be famous. People are going to remember this day, July 2nd, 1776. He said they're going to celebrate it with parties. And he even said, like, people are going to celebrate it with fireworks. And he was 2 days off because they signed it July 2nd, but then somehow, I don't know what, but like somehow the process of them doing it, it wasn't fully adopted until July 4th. So he went home that night, July 2nd, and he said, people are going to remember this day. And he was wrong. Okay, there were 13 original states. Can we name 3?
Actually, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Minnesota.
Well, not Minnesota. No, they're all on
Not Minnesota.
No, they're all on the East Coast here. Let's say 13.
New York, Ohio, probably because it's close to PA.
Let's see if we can get a map. Okay, here's. Nope, that's not right. Okay, so here. Where can I get? Oh, it's even smaller, it looks. So they're all on the East Coast. You have New Hampshire. Vermont, here in the purple, didn't exist yet, so not Vermont. We have New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, tiny Delaware, Maryland, Virginia. Now you notice Virginia isn't the shape that it is today. Virginia at the time included the land that we now call West Virginia. It was all, at that time, all Virginia. It wasn't until the Civil War that West Virginia broke off and became its own state. North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. Those are the 13 colonies, which then, with independence, became the 13 states. Those are the first 13 states. Not, and all of those are touching the Atlantic Ocean. Ohio comes pretty quickly, everything, that next wave of states happens pretty quickly within 10, 20 years. but on July 4th, 1776, those are the 13 colonies, the 13 states that existed. Okay, maybe we stop there. 64, that's pretty good. We can pick up there next week. I appreciate that. So yeah, any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Oh.
Well, it took us pretty close to noon here, so yeah, we'll finish up. We'll definitely make sure we move a little faster next week. We finish up next week, and no, I think it's a fun thing to do. Go through here. Again, it's things that you both certainly know very well, but just covering the basics.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, good. Well, thank you for logging in. I appreciate it from both of you, and have a great week. Stay safe.
You too. Thank you. Thank you for the lesson.
Yeah,
Bye.
no problem. Have a good day.
You too.